Welcome to CinePro, where we bring your favorite movies back to life with quick recaps, hidden details, and everything you missed. The movie Trapped begins with a young man named Shaya. He falls in love with his office colleague Nuri, but although she likes him too, she already has an arranged marriage set for the coming months. With the ceremony approaching, Shaya asks her to call off the wedding and stay with him, but Nuri says she can't do that because she would be kicked out of her house and have nowhere to live. The young man promises to get a house in the next few days. For that, Shaya gathers all his savings and starts looking for a place. But since he only managed to save 15,000 rupees, he doesn't have enough money to pay rent for a decent place and is rejected at the places he visits. Until, at the last one, a strange man sees his desperation and runs after him in the middle of the street, saying he has an apartment that fits his budget. With no other option, Shaya agrees to visit the place and goes there with the man. As soon as they arrive at the building, they pass by the security guard who doesn't even notice their presence and enter the elevator, where the man explains that he will be the only resident because the building is still under construction. With that explained, they go to the 35th floor and Shaya is delighted with the apartment, which is already furnished and in perfect condition, except for the door, which is stuck and even with the key is hard to open. He doesn't mind this detail and agrees to rent the apartment, where he spends the night happy with this new acquisition. The next morning, Shaya wakes up very early and starts getting ready for work. But the place is completely without water and he can't brush his teeth. Unable to miss work, Shaya gets ready anyway and leaves the apartment. However, at the moment he calls the elevator, Nuri calls him, making him realize he forgot his phone on the bed. He goes back, unlocks the door, and answers the call, saying he'll take her somewhere special after work. But while talking on the phone, he doesn't notice he left the door open until a gust of wind slams the door shut, trapping him inside. Since he left the key outside, Shaya tries to turn the knob to open the door, but ends up forcing it too much and the object breaks in his hand. At that moment, the young man goes to the kitchen cupboard, grabs pliers, and again tries to open the door, but without success. Realizing he won't be able to get out on his own, Shaya calls a locksmith and asks him to come to the apartment, but his cell phone dies right as he's giving the address. That's right, folks. His phone didn't charge overnight because the socket had a bad connection. Once he realizes this, the man puts his phone on the charger and turns on the air conditioner while waiting for the battery to recharge. However, somehow this overloads the electrical system, leaving the whole building without power. Now locked inside the apartment, unreachable, without water and electricity, Shaya's nightmare begins. Desperate to get out, he starts banging on the door latch with the pliers but realizes it won't work when he opens a wound on his own hand. He then runs to the balcony and starts shouting, trying to get someone's attention from the street, but he's too high up to be heard. Realizing no one will come to help, Shaya tries to rub the phone battery against his pants to energize it with static electricity, but obviously it doesn't work. For that to work, he would need to rub it at an absurd speed. Frustrated, the young man throws his phone away but soon has another idea and retrieves it to try charging it with sunlight. But that doesn't work either. Luckily, he didn't start a fire. After that, he gives up and just sits on the sink, thinking about life. But during the night, he decides to grab a flashlight and cover it with a red cloth, making a kind of emergency light. But even though it's a good idea, no one can see him. On the morning of the second day, Shaya goes through all the rooms, checking if the power or water has returned. And when he realizes it hasn't, he grabs a pot and starts banging on the protective grill, again trying to get people's attention. But that doesn't work either. In a desperate act, Shaya tears the TV off the wall and throws it through the bars to try to get the building's security guard's attention. But the old man is practically deaf and hears nothing. After that, the young man notices some cardboard boxes on top of the cupboard and decides to use them to write a message. He then grabs the boxes and starts separating some pieces to write. But what exactly to use as ink? Thinking about this, Shaya starts searching the house for some material until he finds a tube with a green substance, which he uses to finally write a plea for help and say where he is. With the message written, Shaya goes to the balcony and throws it through the bars. But unfortunately, the cardboard falls straight onto the roof of a house and he needs to write a second message. This time, he throws the cardboard in another direction. But even so, the message lands on top of another building and, frustrated, he goes back to the kitchen to write another plea for help. But that green substance runs out. After failing to find anything else to write with, he opens that, wound on his hand that he made the day before, and uses his own blood to write the message. With that done, he throws the cardboard, which this time finally lands on the terrace of a house. Now it's just a matter of time until someone sees the message and comes to rescue him. But no one shows up, and the second day ends with him watching people partying outside. During the night, the guy goes to get a pack of cookies to eat when he starts hearing a strange noise, and when he shines his light around, he sees a huge rat. He tries to run away but ends up turning too quickly and hits his head on the wall, passing out instantly. In the morning of the third day, the man regains consciousness and realizes the water is back, but afraid of the rat, which is still in the bathroom, he goes to another room to drink from the tap. However, for some reason, the only one working is the bathroom tap, where the rat is. Overcome by fear, he cries while standing there, watching the water being wasted until it stops flowing completely. With no idea what to do, the guy decides to write another message, but with his wound almost completely healed, he breaks the bathroom mirror and makes a cut on his fingertip, using the blood to write a plea for help once again. When he finishes, he goes to the balcony and throws the cardboard, which falls right at the entrance of the building, but the security guard doesn't see it. To try to get attention, he improvises a slingshot, grabs some small stones, and starts throwing them towards the terrace where a woman is taking clothes off the line. But he can't throw close enough and she leaves without seeing the cardboard. Still trying to signal that he's there, he tears up some clothes and uses the fabric to form the word "help" on the balcony. But since it's nighttime, no one can see. The next morning, the security guard finds the cardboard at the building entrance but ignores it, thinking it's some kind of prank by kids. However, almost simultaneously, after 3 days, the woman finally finds the plea for help and drops her clothes to try to save him. But as soon as she arrives at the building, she meets the security guard who says the building is still under construction and no one is living there. Finding the whole situation strange, the woman still insists that someone might need help and goes to the elevator. But since the building has no power, she starts walking up the stairs until halfway. She realizes the lower floors are really empty and decides to go back home, while he is a few floors above, trying to get her attention. After realizing she left, the man gets frustrated that another plan failed and decides he'll do anything to be noticed. He remembers the plea for help on the balcony, grabs a box of matches, and makes a kind of improvised torch, which he uses to set the fabric on the railing on fire. That way, it's practically impossible for no one to see. As soon as he realizes it's working, he runs to the bedroom and brings the mattress to burn it, making an even bigger flame. But the fire starts to get out of control, and he has to spend the entire night awake putting out the flames so he doesn't get burned alive. Tired and having eaten or drunk nothing for the last 5 days, he starts eating whatever he finds in the apartment to avoid malnutrition. However, knowing that won't be enough to survive, he grabs a piece of wood and goes into the bathroom where the rat is to try to get his cookie back. But as expected, the damn Mickey with leptospirosis didn't leave a single crumb. At that moment, the rat appears. They stare at each other as if in a Wild West duel. But suddenly the flashlight starts to fail and he panics, curling up in a fetal position like a baby, aware that his dehydration is getting worse every second. The next morning, he urinates in a pot to drink it, but he ends up feeling sick and throws up all the food he still had in his stomach. Now even more dehydrated and hungry, he lies on the bathroom floor without the strength to do anything until suddenly he starts to hear a strange noise. Curious about what it could be, he gets up and goes to the balcony, where he realizes it's the sound of rain. After 6 days without water, he can finally rehydrate. Not knowing when he'll have water again, he uses the toilet tank and the bathroom siphon to make a water collector, with which he manages to fill several buckets. But wanting to store even more, he disassembles the fridge and uses it as a big water tank. That way, he has water for several days and can finally take his first shower in the new apartment. On the 7th day, he decides to use the slingshot he made to hit a pigeon that landed on the balcony. And even though he's a vegetarian because of his religion, he plucks the animal and makes an improvised campfire to cook the bird's meat. But the moment he leaves to go to the bathroom, the damn filthy rat takes the opportunity to eat the pigeon. Angry at the thieving rat, he starts running around the apartment after the rat until he manages to catch it by the tail, saying he's going to eat it, but ends up giving up and lets it go, making the animal pass out from the fall. With the sanity of the Joker and Deadpool combined, he puts the plague-ridden Stuart Little in a plastic box and feeds it pigeon meat while they spend the whole night talking. The next morning, the guy starts taking the other floors of the building with a piece from the mirror until he discovers that the apartment on the 30th floor still doesn't have the balcony bars, meaning if they manage to find a way to cut the tubes that keep him there, he can go down and escape through the front door. Without really knowing how he'll do it, Zara starts to come up with a plan with his rodent friends so they can get out of there. But with only a broken fan blade, a fuse, and a pan to cut the tubes, it will definitely be a slow process. Knowing this, the man begins his long journey to saw through the bars and finally escape. But with these tools being dull, several days go by and he can't even cut halfway through the tube. Trying to speed up the process, he improvises a kind of blowtorch to heat the tube and make it more malleable. That way, he finally manages to make some progress, but still, The whole process continues to be slow, and with no more pigeons to catch, he has to eat everything he finds to survive, from ants to bigger insects like cockroaches. Thinking he's close to escaping, Zarya finally frees the wild rat and keeps sawing the iron bar until he takes a break to hydrate with the water, which is now completely murky. But this was a big mistake, because soon he starts to feel sick and once again throws up everything he ate, until he finally faints. The next morning, Cher wakes up completely exhausted but still doesn't give up. He puts on his clothes and goes straight to the balcony, where he keeps kicking the bars until finally one tube breaks. At last, after 2 weeks trapped, he finally finds a way out. Even practically without strength, he hangs himself outside and slowly starts descending the floors until he reaches the 30th floor, where he notices another problem. Since there are no protective bars, there are also no tubes to hold onto. So, one wrong step and he's done for. Having come too far to simply give up, Cher goes back to the 31st floor and fastens his belt to one of the tubes, making a kind of improvised safety rope with his extremely professional equipment. He starts hanging from the belt until he finally manages to put the tip of his foot on the railing and walks slowly along the bars until he reaches the balcony. But when he tries to open the door, he realizes it's locked. Completely exhausted from everything going wrong, Shawari summons the rest of his strength and starts kicking the glass like crazy until he finally manages to break part of the door. Afraid something else might go wrong, Cher walks slowly to the main door. But when he pulls the handle, the door opens without difficulty. So, after so many days, the guy finally achieved his long-awaited freedom. Even extremely debilitated due to his unhealthy diet and countless days without water, he goes down the 30 flights of stairs and walks alone to the hospital. After a few days unconscious in the ICU, Cher wakes up with Noonies crying beside him, believing it's out of happiness. The guy starts to smile and tries to hold her hand, but the woman pulls away, revealing she's wearing a wedding ring and leaves. That's right, folks. The woman he loves married someone else, and in the end, it was all for nothing. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell to get more new videos. See you next time.